Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and today we are tackling the last part of the best and worst cards released in each set. If you have not seen part 1 and part 2, go and watch them. They will be in the description. You can find the link. Click on them. Give me views. Thank you. And if you have, quick refresher on the rules, just very fast. Remember, we are only talking about cards in their original form. That's rule number 1. And rule number 2, there are no poros in the worst cards, and there are no event cards. It is only the cards that came out as a part of the sets. So no Aphelios and things like that. So with that said, today we're going to tackle Empires Ascended and then go on to Beyond the Bandlewood, and we're going to start, as we always do, with the worst cards and the honorable mentions. So when looking at the worst cards, we have 3 honorable mentions for Empires Ascended, and they are Spoils of War, Shadows of the Past, and Shifting Sands. We don't need to spend too much time on these cards. They're all pretty bad. To be honest, I don't think I've seen anyone play these cards. If I'm being honest, I can't actually remember ever coming across these cards or anyone actually playing them. Maybe Shadows of the Past once, but it's very rare to see these cards. These are the kind of cards that honestly I think some people wouldn't even know exist. Like, they aren't even that interesting as cards. So yeah, just pretty horrendous cards. There isn't much to say about them. So let's move on to our top 3 worst cards, where we can dig in a little more. Coming in at number 3, perhaps a bit of a surprise to be only number 3. Could have perhaps been a little higher, I will admit. This one was a bit difficult, to be honest, in terms of ranking them, but it is Spiral Stairs, the 3-mana landmark. With Countdown 3, create a Seed of Strength in hand, and Seed of Strength, of course, is granting an ally +3/+2 and Overwhelm. Hey, great ability, right? This Seed of Strength, you know, really strong, like, powerful ability. Why is this card so bad? Well, many reasons. Of course, on this Seed of Strength, you see the little fleeting tag here, meaning that you don't get to keep it. And also you see the slow tag here, meaning that you can't, you know, give this to an ally mid-combat or anything like that. Or even as a reply to your opponent trying to remove your unit. So you pay 3 mana for a landmark, and then in 3 turns, so 3 mana for something that isn't going to do anything until turn, you know, 6. And then what you get is a spell that you have to play on that turn, that you can't use reactively at all. You have to pre-commit it onto something. It does give you a powerful effect, but just that combination of, you know, using 3 mana to get something on turn 6 that, like, you have to use that turn, and you can't react with it. It's just so bad. I mean, this card, what were they thinking with this card? Why does this card cost 3 mana? Why is this fleeting? Why is it slow speed? There are so many questions to ask here, and I don't know the answer to them at all, to be honest. So yeah, Spiral says just a truly woeful card, and definitely belongs on this list. At number 2, we are unworthy. We are unworthy of the number 1 spot. That's how bad this card is. It isn't even interesting enough to get the number 1 spot. It's unworthy of being number 1 on this list. So it's coming in at number 2 instead. The 2-mana slow speed spell, give an enemy follower -4 attack this round. If you have fewer mana gems than your opponent, kill it instead. Oh my god, this card. Right, so what's bad about this card? Well, repeat after me. Slow speed is bad. Yes, slow speed, and then giving an enemy follower -4 attack this round. As we've done this, there's been quite a few themes that have come up when we're talking about the worst cards, and they are that often they are slow speed spells. Often they use the word enemy follower on them. And then this one has the added benefit as well of having this extra little thing to, you know, that kind of baits you into thinking maybe this card could be good somewhere down the line, where if you have fewer mana gems than your opponent, kill it instead. But of course, you know, whilst Rite of Calling and Rite of Negation have actually seen play and are worth seeing play, they obviously mostly saw play in decks where you felt comfortable with killing the unit rather than getting rid of one of your mana gems, because having fewer mana gems than your opponent is just a bad thing. Unless we get into like a serious, unless there's a ramp deck that is seriously just completely broken. You know, this kind of effect just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And so, yeah, this was just, I mean, what a truly horrendous card. Seriously, again, as I say, all 3 on this list, potentially could be number one. If they were in different sets, I think they would be number one in the worst. And unworthy, but unworthy is unworthy of that for being kind of a boring card as well. And then coming in at number one is Starlit Epiphany. If I'm being honest, maybe I'm being a bit harsh here. You know, when I first initially made this list, it's a couple days since I made this. Maybe I was being harsh on Starlit Epiphany, because at least this kind of has a cool animation. I don't know why they wasted an animation on this card. You know, obviously it's a complete meme card and things, you know, it is just a meme card. And I would say that basically you're paying for a 3-mana Invoke, that makes your deck worse, which is never really a great thing to have. Making your deck worse, making it so that your opponent knows what's in your deck and hand, and almost certainly making your deck worse, because Behold the Infinite is a card that, you know, doesn't really ever see play anyway, so you're basically taking a deck of cards that, you know, it's probably full of cards that are playable, and instead deciding to replace them with cards that aren't really playable. That's kind of where you're going with this. So you're basically paying 3 mana for an Invoke, which is just not really worth it. Because, you know, if you wanted to do that, just play this card. Like, it's just a direct downgrade in every single way. And so, yeah, this card is truly terrible. Don't know why it has an animation and, like, Poki Stick doesn't. Like, can we fix... Like, why are we wasting time? Like, can we waste the animation budget on this game on cards that, like, you know, people will play? Like, you know, I still want a big Poki Stick animation where, you know, just like a big yodel hand comes in with a stick and just, you know, pokes whatever card it is, and it deals damage. I want to see that, because I think that would be hilarious. But yeah, Starlit Epiphany, truly a terrible card. As I say, telling your opponent what's in your hand isn't good. Replacing your deck with, I mean, I suppose there are some, like, mill conditions where, like, it makes some sense, but mill hasn't really ever been a thing in this. The chances of you playing a Starlit Epiphany deck and coming up against a mill deck are pretty much zero. So yeah, it's just never going to be good. Yeah, and so I think on reflection, it definitely does deserve a place on this list, because to make your deck worse is quite the thing. Quite the thing. You know, you've probably got, like, some outs in your deck, but as soon as you play this card and you know, get off this second part of it, you probably don't have outs all of a sudden. You know, you take your chances of winning in a lot of games from, like, a certain percent, and it probably lowers them, to be honest. And so to pay 3 mana to lower your chances of winning probably isn't a good thing. In my opinion, it's probably not the best thing overall. But now let's move on to the top cards from Empires Ascended. And we have some very, very, very good options in this, as I'm sure you're all aware. And I'm interested to see, you know, where different people would have, you know, these different cards rated. But let's first talk about the honorable mentions. And again, this one was very tricky, as there were a lot of good cards that came out during this expansion. But let's just dive in. So we have Treasure Seeker, Rockhopper, Azir, Aurelia, Inspiring Marshal, and Shapestone as our honorable mentions. Of course, just all very, very strong cards. All cards that, you know, well, not all got nerfs, but, you know, I think definitely could have got nerfs, and most of them did. Obviously, Azir Aurelia dominated for a long time. Inspiring Marshal and Shapestone were also part of that. So was Treasure Seeker. There was a lot of cards there on this list that, you know, all kind of were accredited to, you know, kind of breaking the game for some time. And so, yeah, I think they're, you know, these are the cards that you expected to see on this list, let's be real. Obviously, there was a lot of nerfs involved with the whole Azir Aurelia thing and other parts of Shreemer as well, which, you know, we'll get into. But yeah, definitely all deserving of at least a mention on this list. I think if I wouldn't have mentioned some of these cards, you know, people definitely would have been kicking off. But yeah, a lot of Shreemer in there, a lot of power within Shreemer. The Shreeman Desert was very vast. But we'll move on to our top 3 now and see, you know, what order do I'm sure you can probably work out the 3 cards, but what order have I put them in? Well, coming in at number 3 was, of course, Ruin Runner, which used to be a 6/4, as we all remember. Obviously, just a super powerful card, a 5-mana 6/4 with Overwhelm Spell Shield. Like, There were just very, very few things that could, really deal with it. And of course, then you combine this with like the combat tricks, or with Shurima giving something vulnerable that Rune Runner could just attack into. You were kind of doomed. I mean, this card just from day one, as soon as it came out, everyone was like, "Oh, this is an insane card," and it was an insane card. Funnily enough, in the first Shuriman set, I made a prediction for, what the top 2 cards from that first part of the Shuriman expansion would be. Rune Runner came in second, and, the card that's coming in number 2 position was number 1. So, when we saw these cards, we knew that they were just really, really very strong. And, yeah, of course, by the time the full Shuriman set released, we were seeing, just these cards be played everywhere, and Rune Runner was definitely a part of that. Just an insanely strong card. A very simple card, but, at the same time, just really, really, really strong. But coming in at number 2 was Doomkeeper. Obviously, Doomkeeper got its stats switched around. Used to be a 2-1, now is a 1-2. But even as a 1-2, I think it's still a very powerful card. Why was Doomkeeper so strong? Well, as I said, I had it as like the number 1 card from that initial little expansion of Shurima. But why was it so strong? Well, basically, it was a 1-drop that you could find good value with, much later in the game as well. If your opponent was threatening a big attack, a Doomkeeper was like, a great thing. Because your opponent is threatening a big attack, well, I can play my Doomkeeper here, and I've got kind of 2 free blocks. I've got 2 nice chump blockers all of a sudden. I need to push some damage for lethal. Same thing for Doomkeeper, right? Like, I can go wide here, and I can try and push, maybe 4 damage with this 1 card. That can win me the game. That's really why Doomkeeper was so good. It was good on turn 1. It was insane on turn 1. And it was, still pretty good going on to, like, turn 5, turn 6. And any 1-drop that can do that is, insane on turn 1 and good on turn 5, like, that's a card that is going to see a lot of play and is very strong. And that's why Doomkeeper was probably the strongest 1-drop we've ever seen. Not only because it could deal 4 damage on turn 1, which it often would, but, just because of that versatility in it. You could often just sacrifice the Sand Soldier for, a Rite of Calling or a Glimpse Beyond or anything like that. Just insanely, insanely good in every facet. And, still a good card after the nerf, but obviously having the 2 attack meant that Doomkeeper could push more damage. Doomkeeper could trade with more things. So, the nerf did hurt, but still a strong card, and when it initially came out, oh my goodness, insanely strong. But for number 1, and there is no surprise, of course, it is Merciless Hunter. At 3 mana 4/3, as it used to be, of course, just the ability to trade into anything. Giving it Fearsome as well just felt like, just like an extra thing that it probably didn't need, but got anyway. But just an insanely strong card. Basically a 3 mana, kill a unit and have a 4/1 is most of the time like what it read. Which, yeah. Or again, it's the same kind of thing as Doomkeeper where, again, this card really insane on turn 3, but also very, very good on turn 6, 7, 8. Because giving your opponent's big threat vulnerable, or that champion vulnerable, or anything like that, it's just really, really, really strong. And, we all obviously we all got used to the memes of, another gift for Renekton, because the game was dominated by gifts for Renekton for quite some time. This card, basically saw play in almost every Shurima deck. And yeah, it was just obviously when Sivir got buffed as well, that kind of made this combo even more oppressive, with all the quick attacks, and particularly when Akshan came out as well. Like, that just having like 2 good quick attack champions in the same region as Merciless Hunter as well, and having them be in a perfect curve, and then having Rune Runner fit that perfect curve as well. God, that was a decision that they decided to make. Yeah, and this card obviously was really at the center of it, just absolutely dominant. When this card came out, it kind of helped make Thresh Nasus dominant. And then, obviously once again appeared in a dominant form again once Akshan had come out and Sivir had got buffed. Just absolutely insanity, and I don't think any of you will probably disagree with this being the number 1 card. Probably one of the strongest. I'm not going to say the strongest. I think we have seen stronger iterations of cards, and cards that have dominated more. But for it might be the strongest follower of all time. I'd have to think about it and maybe a bit more, but it's definitely up there. Definitely up there as one of the strongest followers of all time, and maybe even would take the #1 spot. Moving on to Beyond the Bandlewood, and obviously this is the expansion we haven't got all of yet, so there might be some, leeway for disagreement in this one. But going on to our worst cards, we have 2 honorable mentions, and they are Journeying Sandhopper and Servitude of Desolation. In Sandhopper's case, just a 3-mana 4/3 with like a tune is just, it's just not worth it. And to be fair to Sandhopper, it probably wouldn't be on these lists like in past expansions, but with Beyond the Bandlewood, in my opinion, we have noticed a considerable kind of power creep, and so there aren't as many bad cards in my opinion. But in Servitude of Desolation's case, this one is one where, again, people initially probably thought like, oh, this is kind of an interesting, cool, kind of unique card that could find some use. But the problem with it is just like the time that you're thinking of that like you're going to get the absolute nuts and like your whole board is going to be saved is just so minimal. It's like it's just never really going to happen, and paying 7 mana for that is just too much. It's too much for that such a niche scenario, or it definitely is extremely meta dependent to ever try and get that. But with that said, let's move into our top 3 and see what they are. Coming in at number 3 is Battle Bonds, which is a 4-mana slow speed spell. Grant 2 allies +2/+2. You guys probably all understand why this card isn't that great. To start with, granting allies anything has always been somewhat underwhelming in Runeterra. Basically, you just put a bigger target on something's head, and playing against most good decks, they'll have some way of, getting rid of that thing that you just put a bigger target on. And being slow speed means that, your opponent could basically kill both units potentially before this spell even resolved, meaning that you could pay 4 mana to do nothing. And in most scenarios, you're probably going to pay 4 mana to probably give 1 ally +2/+2, and obviously that just is never really worth it. So yeah, Battle Bond's a pretty horrendous spell, one of those that I think we all could have guessed was pretty bad, and it turned out to be just that. Coming in at number 2 is Weapons of the Lost, and it was close. I'm sure you can, again, some of you will be able to guess what number 1 is, but it was close because these are both horrendous cards, number 2 and number 1. Deal 3 to 8 mana. 8 mana. Slow speed. Deal 3 to a unit and summon a Trifarian Shield Breaker. I mean, this is just horrendous. Truly horrendous. Trifarian Shield Breaker has never seen any play. And Weapons of the Lost, I mean, to deal 3 to a unit. So normally what happens with these kind of spells is sometimes you'll get like 2 effects in one, which can sometimes be a bit clunky, with the slow speed. So they'll give you like a 1 mana reduction on it. This, for whatever reason, doesn't, right? It's 3 mana to pay, 3 to deal to a unit, and then 5 for your Trifarian Shield Breaker. And so the combination of those cards, we still have an 8 mana card, but it's also slow speed. I mean, maybe if it was fast speed, this could warrant being 8 mana, maybe, and be a card that maybe you could play in Expedition. But this card is truly horrendous. I don't know what they were thinking with this card. Like, why does this card exist? I have no idea. I seriously do not have a single idea why this card exists. It's just such an odd design for a card in general. And it's also truly awful. So, yeah, Weapons of the Lost, a pretty awful card. But coming in at number 1 is, of course, Mega Inferno Bomb, aka Avalanche, but +3 mana. It's kind of what this card is. Obviously, this card, I mean, maybe this should be number 2, because at least this card has a reason to exist. For those of you who don't know, Ziggs was meant to synergize with this. Ziggs was meant to give you, like, some sort of buff to this, so that instead of dealing 1, it would maybe deal 2, and, it would work with Ziggs, and that's the whole point, right? But obviously, they changed Ziggs at some point, and this card got left as it was, and so it ended up basically being Avalanche that costs 3 more mana. Now, Avalanche is a good card, don't get me wrong. It's a perfectly fine, good card, but, +3 mana on, you could take any card, give it +3 mana, and it would become one of the worst cards in the game. And that's essentially what we have here. Yeah, Mega Inferno Bomb, I don't think you'll ever see anyone play this card. I wonder if it has an animation, because I'm sure no one has ever bothered to find out, because it's that bad of a card. So yeah, Mega Inferno Bomb takes the number 1 spot. And that concludes our list of the bottom 3 cards in Beyond the Bandlewood. So moving on to the top cards in Bandel City, and this one was, pretty tricky. I had a, not an easy time deciding which ones should go on the list and which ones would be the honorable mentions, but I do have some honorable mentions, so let's go into them now, shall we? So, we actually have 3 champions on this list. They are, of course, Nami, Poppy, and Sion. Which one's better is kind of an interesting debate. Personally, it's very tough because Nami kind of fits very well in one deck and is crazy in that one deck. Poppy is kind of insane in a lot of different decks. I'd say Sion is slightly below them overall. Those are the 2, but it's still very close and I think definitely deserves a mention. Obviously, all 3 are just completely really, really good. They might not get nerfed directly, but I would expect nerfs to their decks definitely to be upcoming. Other honorable mentions are, of course, Loping Telescope, Fleet Admiral Shelley, and Aloof Travelers. Again, all very, very strong cards that have seen a lot of play. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure most of you, these are the kind of cards that you're expecting on this list. All cards that I think either will get nerfed or, might get nerfed in the kind of future. Just very, very strong in general. So coming in at number 3 then, we have Lost Soul. Lost Soul is, of course, a very, very powerful card that can kind of single-handedly win games. I know it has for me. I'm sure it has for many others as well, where, if you get a Lost Soul and the Twin Blade Revenant, of course, it will kind of just be such a value engine that it kind of it turns the game into a different kind of landscape, where it's like, if this game goes on forever, I will win. Like, because I'll constantly have cards because of this one card. That's kind of what this card does. To a game, it kind of turns into that, I'll constantly have cards and you might not. So, kind of the longer this game goes, I should be good. And yeah, just an insanely powerful card, particularly with the good discard tools that we have available. It's a good thing they nerfed Rummage because, oh my god, that would be just even more disgusting with this card. But yeah, this card single-handedly can win games, and I know in a lot of games with those kind of Draven mid-range decks, it can be like, if you didn't draw Lost Soul in certain matchups, then your win percentage will go down by quite a lot. Whereas if you do have Lost Soul, your win percentage can go up very, very much so. And yeah, it just feels like a free kind of card. Like, it's just a constant free card. It's like if you could just, sort of take a card off to the side and be like, I always could play this card. That's what this card kind of feels like anytime you draw it. Like, you're just going to get free cards, essentially. It's like you're drawing an extra card each turn. You get to discard the Lost Soul. So, yeah, just a very, very powerful card in general. And definitely deserves a place on this list. Coming in at number 2, though, is the Yordle Mayor himself, Bandel City Mayor, of course. Has seen play in a ton of different strategies and decks. Basically, just the ability to vomit out your hand when you play this card down and, just play units and then units and then units. Basically, this card just forces your opponent to say, remove me now or face the consequences. But even if you do remove this card, well, they still got a card back from it, right? You've traded one card for their card, but, Bandel City Mayor created another card. But that's the thing, Bandel City Mayor requires removal almost instantly, or it's just going to end the game far too quickly, and that's kind of the problem, right? The Bandel City Mayor is just a super, super powerful card. Again, I would not be shocked if this card got nerfed at all. Whether it becomes like a 2-1 or something, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because as I say, you have to remove this card. But then, even once you've removed it, unless you're paying like less mana than 3, they've just always got the better trade because they also created a card in hand. They haven't lost anything in hand. Just insanely, insanely good. And, has even the potential to become better. Obviously, we don't know the multi-region followers. They could be on a slightly lower scale. They could be slightly higher. We don't quite know at this very moment in time. But if the other multi-region followers that come out in the near future are good, then obviously Bandel City Mayor just becomes even better, and we end up with an even bigger problem. So yeah, very, very strong card. I'm sure that most of you expected it to be on this list. And finally, at the number 1 spot for this expansion, we have Poki Stick. which is probably not the most frustrating card to play against, but any card, in my opinion, that is just in every deck, and any deck not running it is, you know, wrong because they should be running it. I mean, how is this card not the most powerful one? It should be in every single deck that you can play Bandel City. It should just be in every single one straight away, a 3 of. Don't even think about it. As soon as you're playing Bandel City, you have 3 cards in your deck, and they are 3 Poki Sticks. That's basically just the way it is. It's just a super, super strong card. It's so flexible. The draw is obviously really, really good in every single way. It pretty much is everything that you could want. Like, it's just such a simple design, but it's just so good at the same time. Yeah, there isn't much more to say about it, really. It's not perhaps the most interesting choice. It's not the card that makes people's blood boil that much. You know, people aren't clamoring for nerfs because it's kind of understood that every region kind of needs a spell that is maybe a bit overtuned. But Poki Stick is just really, really strong in every single way. So I think it just deserves this position because this card is really, 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 really good. And you will see it for a very, very long time, I'm sure, being played in matches. So yeah, Poki Stick will round us out for this entire series of videos as the #1 spot. And that is that. Just before we go, I know some of you in the comments will be, you know, shouting about Minimorph or whatever, so I'll just address it here. I didn't include Minimorph on that list because I think Minimorph's problem is not necessarily a strength problem, but more so a polarization problem. Minimorph is really good against certain things and is a complete dead card against other things. And I didn't, you know, most of the cards on this list are never dead cards. They're all strong cards in pretty much any situation you can play them. Whereas Minimorph is I think Minimorph's main problem as a card is its high variance in how it determines matches. Either it can lose you a game because you needed another card that actually was worth playing in that scenario, or it can win you a game because you Minimorph their Scion, and you know that might change the game in your favor, right? Like, that's pretty much how Minimorph exists, and it's not healthy design at all. And so I get the frustration with the card, but is it like a super, super powerful card? It of course is good, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's like on the level that, you know, is like super, super powerful, and that we should all be, you know, screaming and worrying about it either. And so that will round out this little series of videos. I want to thank everyone for watching. Let me know what you thought of these rankings down below in the comments, because I love, you know, seeing the debate and joining in on the debate as well. So yeah, leave a comment down below with what you thought, and have a really nice day.